Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University, Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Fugit.
Welcome back, tipsters. Today, Gilbert and I are chatting with Pastor Jim Henkell, Ministry Executive in the Pacific Southwest District of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. An alum of Concordia University, Irvine, Pastor Jim has served a number of churches over the years behind the pulpit.
Yes, he has, Ashley, but now he takes his ministry experiences paired with his leadership skills on the road, working to inspire and support church workers and ministries throughout Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada. Whether you are in a church work field or not, Pastor Jim's insights can inspire us all as we work to encourage others in our own vocations. So let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Townsend Institute podcast series. Gilbert and I are here today with Pastor Jim Henkell. Hello, Pastor Jim. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast.
Hi, Ashlie and Gilbert. Thank you so much for inviting me. Great to spend time with you.
Glad you're here today, Pastor Jim. Thank you.
This is going to be great. We're excited to dive into this topic that you've been really just doing a whole lot of work with. And before we get into that, we want to give our listeners just a little bit of a background on your journey to get to where you are today. Of course, I know one of your claim to fame is you are an alumni of Concordia University, Irvine. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that and how you've gotten to the role you're at today.
And he has a brick too. I've seen the brick there.
A brick that you've really made it. When you have the brick on campus, then you really know you've made it.
You've got the alumni brick.
That is the proof. The evidence that I'm
not the diploma, not the diploma, the brick.
No, definitely not the degree. It's that you have the brick there. You've invested. But I'll tell you what, the brick is indicative of that ongoing relationship with Concordia. I am not only delighted to be an alumnus, but a partner in ministry with Concordia in a variety of different ways over the years, including as a region when the board voted on this partnership between Concordia and Townsend. And so to see the way Townsend has developed to participate in this podcast is terrific.
Oh my goodness. I don't think I realized that went back at that time. You were part of that voting group. And if we haven't already, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
on behalf of the Townsend Institute. We appreciate it.
Thank God for the way that he's worked and continues to work through all of us. It's a neat thing to experience together.
Absolutely. Yep.
But I have served as a pastor in the Lutheran Church for the last 25 plus years with Lutheran churches and schools in Southern California. And I am now called as the ministry executive for the Pacific Southwest District, which means I get to partner with ministry leaders, church workers in churches and schools throughout Southern California, Arizona, and Southern Nevada.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of driving. All these areas.
It's a lot of driving. It's a bit of flying. As I accepted this role, my wife transitioned to a new role, which allows her to work remotely. And so she's able to travel with me for some of it, which is fantastic. She is just such a wonderful leader and encourager in her own right. And for us to be able to experience so many things together makes it doable.
That's pretty great. And now remind us again, what is that region? So Pacific Southwest District is obviously the bottom half of California, but then you're into Nevada and Hawaii. Is that right?
No. Of it. So our friends in Northern California get Hawaii. They get to travel there.
Rough.
So we get all of Southern California, the whole state of Arizona, which is pretty great.
Yes.
And then Southern Nevada, especially the area around Las Vegas. And that represents 270 churches, 150 schools, thousands of folks who are serving and leading in those places.
Well,
Wonderful.
well, Pastor Jim, you work with a lot of people, over 270 schools and churches and all of these. So a lot of church workers in the Pacific Southwest District, and I think throughout the country. You do a lot of speaking around at various conferences and things. We were talking about this topic, and we thought it would be really interesting. What are some of the lies that leaders are telling themselves today that you have been, talking about and helping them work through?
It's a really interesting question. And it's a question that I pondered theologically
Mm.
before I pondered it practically.
Mm.
Theologically, I pondered it because the foundation of every struggle, every sin we have is a lie. Anything that we may struggle with as believers, any sin we give into, has a lie as its base. There's something we're believing that we ought not. But I got thinking about it practically as well in relationship to leadership. There's all kinds of lies that leaders may tell themselves, and these are not lies that they necessarily shout loudly, but lies that are whispered quietly
Mm.
as they are navigating their experiences. And one of the initial ones that I encounter is, "I am not a leader." One of the
Mm.
lies leaders tell themselves is, "I am not a leader," because they have this perception, as many do, that leadership takes a particular form, that it's got to express itself in bold vision or public communication or whatever it may be. But leadership has so many expressions and forms, as you well know. And as I think about that, I often reflect on my mom.
Mm.
My mom would not describe herself as a leader, nor may others define her in that way. She finds herself in a family with a number of different leaders, but she has never cast a vision for an organization. She has never spoken publicly. She has never been a formal coach or mentor or any of those things that we associate with leadership. But to deny her leadership would be a mistake.
Mm.
My mom has an incredible influence on our family, especially as it comes to prayer. She is a
Mm.
person of just deep and abiding prayer, someone who, as parents do, tends to worry or deal with anxiety when it comes to her family, but that drives her to pray. And that prayer has really shaped our family. It's shaped the way we pray together. It's shaped the value of prayer in our family dynamic and in our faith. She's a leader
Yeah.
in that way, but would not otherwise describe herself as that. And there are all kinds of people out there that may say, "I am not a leader," and yet God is working through them to be people of influence. And they need to be encouraged in that, to recognize that there's an influence to be had there.
I like that. Leaders, people of influence, right?
Hmm.
That's huge. Pastor Jim, one of the things I think is most interesting about your current role is, as you mentioned, you've served for over 2 decades as a pastor in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. But in this role, you're kind of a leader of leaders, so to speak, right? A ministry executive for the district. We talk a lot, even in some of our classes with leadership, that being in a leadership position can sometimes get a bit lonely and can feel a lot of pressure because you don't necessarily have people that you can always turn to, right? In your own organization, perhaps it's frowned upon. You can't necessarily always, talk freely or openly about certain situations going on at the organization. So perhaps that's maybe why you and your team are there, is to help maybe carry some of this burden. We talk about maybe seeking wise counsel. Can you talk a little bit about what you and your role do? As you're traveling Arizona, Nevada, and California, what is some of the stuff that you can help bring to some of these ministry leaders across the area?
And you really identified it, for many of the public things that I may do in preaching and speaking and visioning and all kinds of things that are going on. It's really the private relationships and influences with other leaders and people. And, one of the expressions I used just recently, and I guess I hadn't thought about it much before, was that I am a thought partner for a great
Ah.
many people. as they want to work through their thoughts, discuss what it is that they are pondering, pray about things in their life. I'm a thought partner for them. Now, that may mean at times a wise counselor. It may mean a trusted mentor, but just a thought partner to kind of work it through and discuss it with them. And that's something that we can all use and value at
Absolutely.
times.
Yeah.
Ashlie, oh, please, Gilbert.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Ashlie, you talked about the loneliness of leadership at times. And, there's another lie there for leaders. We're talking about lies that leaders tell themselves. Another lie that leaders tell themselves is that leadership has to be lonely.
Yeah.
That people aren't going to understand. And while there is a reality that not everyone may understand, that doesn't mean no one will understand. In fact, you need someone, maybe more than a few someones to understand. And, when it comes to loneliness, so often we think about being around people or that kind of thing. Loneliness is not so much being around people as it is being understood. And it is so essential for leaders to have a couple people in their lives that understand.
Absolutely.
That they can talk with and share with. And so cultivating those relationships is one of the initial experiences of leadership.
Oh, that's huge. Dr. Townsend talks about that here in our institute, and we really stress it with our students is kind of developing that life team.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of them might come from the same industry that you're in, whether you're in church work or something else, but others are just, like you said, who are those people you can trust, right? Who are those mentors that you can come to? And sure, they might not fully be in the same situation you're in, but they can listen and they can, provide the counsel when necessary. That's huge.
Yeah, and you always think about it. Who can you talk to? Because you don't want to get up there every Sunday and be like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so burnt out. I just want to be done with this," or the teacher. The teacher. It's like I can't wait to get these kids out of here. I mean, that's there's professional appropriate vulnerability, but finding the right ones that's really really helpful. Well, so you've been doing this for a little while here. There might be some folks that are new to leadership that have kind of been volunteered or voluntold to jump in here. What are 2 or 3 strategies you would give them for leading in a healthy way?
I'll tell you what, the first one is the one we just discussed, and that is identify and foster relationships with people in your life that understand, to whom you can have those kinds of interactions and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Another one that's been meaningful for me as a leader over the years is to have experiences in which I'm not leading. Sometimes as a leader, the expectation is that you're going to lead in everything. People just turn to you or depend on you or whatever the case may be. But to cultivate experiences in which you are a participant, others are leading. In my case, in church ministry for so many years, that meant I was always a part of a Bible study that I did not lead. I was a participant, I was learning, I was hanging out with other folks and doing that kind of thing. And that was enormously valuable for me. But I really encourage people to continue to have those experiences. And another one, and we talk about this regularly with leadership, is read. Harry Truman famously said, leaders are readers. And he was absolutely right. But that doesn't mean that the things you read have to be entirely focused on leadership or relationship. Don't tell John I said that. Read anything and everything. Read for fun. Reading it cultivates imagining and thinking and so many other things that are so valuable for leading. And as a student for many years, and the two of you can probably relate to this, I read out of expectation. I had to read a lot.
Right.
It's part of what we do as students and that kind of thing. And I recognized there was a stretch in my life from middle school through graduate school in which I don't think I read for pleasure.
Right.
I think everything I read was for expectation. And it wasn't until after graduate school, I found myself traveling and on a plane and, I had some time. There was no iPad and video and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And I ended up reading a book, and it was fantastic. Just a
Mm.
fun fiction book and that kind of stuff. And again, it generates all of this kind of, thinking and imagining and developing and whatever, which is so great for leaders.
Oh, absolutely. And then if you can take it a step further and be part of even a book club where you're then able to talk about that book and the themes with other people, then you've got that relationship building you were talking about that was so important. So
Ashley's starting a book club here in TI, so she's trying to.
Oh,
She's
I'm
promoting it
gonna
right now.
send you the information. But no, I know
that would be very
exactly.
cool.
Absolutely, Pastor Jim. I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I can remember the first book I opened up after I graduated from my graduate program, just because I was so excited to read something. Not that I didn't enjoy the reading I was doing, but it was fun just to kind of, be able to just read something completely different. So that is really important. One thing I want to talk about, I love these things you talked about, finding people who understand, be part of experiences that you're not leading, right? That you're not in the driver's seat for, and reading. These are also practical skills that can go for a leader in any type of industry and any size of industry or organization as well. Because I'm assuming as you're going around and meeting with ministry leaders, you're meeting those that are, running large churches and schools with, serving thousands in their community, to maybe those that it's small, right? It's smaller, but these same principles can apply no matter the size and type. Is that correct?
It's absolutely correct. Whether we are talking about leadership strategies or leadership lies, there are so many insights, so much wisdom that just applies regardless of the context in which you find yourself. Another leadership lie that we had not yet emphasized was that I've listened enough. There
Ooh.
are leaders who, even though they may not express it, tell themselves the lie, I've listened enough. I got it.
Mm.
I have it figured out. And listening is not an experience in leadership that has an end. It is continuous. And so whether I find myself in a large church, with multiple leaders, huge staff, senior leaders, all that kind of stuff, or in a smaller church that may just have one or two people working there, but a few others who are serving there as volunteers, listening is such a critical aspect to leadership. And it's one I have to remind myself of. I'm someone who tends to read people and situations quickly. I'd like to think effectively, but I need to remind myself, listening is so exceedingly valuable. And it's a part of a discussion I end up having with leaders, especially when they are new to churches and schools, when they are new to organizations. Oftentimes leaders want to demonstrate their abilities and giftedness and perspective. And there's going to be an opportunity for that. But before anything else, you got to listen. You have
Yeah,
to cultivate and foster those relationships.
I love that. How do you suggest they do that? Where does some of the best listening take place?
I'll tell you what, it is in just intentional gathering and meeting with people. And so let me go back to my first congregation, the better part of 30 years ago now, when I was called to a congregation in the Los Angeles area. And it was a smaller congregation at that time. There were probably just about 50 folks at the church. And one of the first things that I did was arrange visits with all 50 of them in their
Oh,
homes,
wow.
just to
Yeah.
sit down and listen to them and spend time. And it was great to hear what was going on. Most of them were in the evenings during the week for dinner or just for dessert. It was funny because a dessert that I never really liked was cheesecake. It was just not my thing.
Yeah.
And yet the first family that had me over for dessert served cheesecake, and I obliged and was delighted about it. And so they told everybody else, Pastor Jim really loves cheesecake.
Oh no.
And by the time I was done with my visits, I did love cheesecake. But more than that, I love these people, because I
Right.
really got to hear the things that were on their heart and the way God's was working in their life. And when I found myself in larger congregations over the years and wasn't able to visit everybody in their home,
Right. That'd be a lot of cheesecake.
That's a
It
lot.
would be.
Unless
I,
it's cherry cheesecake. I like cherry. That would be
Oh,
nice.
I'll tell you what, I was still able to visit just a lot of key leaders,
mm,
and
Mm,
so large, small, whatever, that intentional visitation and hanging
mhm.
out and time and relationship development is so, so meaningful.
And Pastor Jim, you talk about when you started out and some of leading, looking at different congregations and things. Can you maybe share a story of an impactful leader that really influenced you in your path in ministry?
Yeah, there were more than a few that I would have. Um, one of them that was an influence in my life was Bill Hemingway. Bill was a pastor in Costa Mesa, and he and I served together during my pastoral internship. And there were many things that I appreciated about Bill, not the least of which was the relationships that we talked about. Bill, too, was a person of influence. He had opportunities to serve the broader church, to speak and do different things. Uh, but Bill always retained that pastoral relational heart.
Mm,
Just the desire to be with people, to hang out with them, to communicate about what God was doing in their lives, and that meant a lot.
Mhm.
I was blessed by different leaders in different ways.
yeah.
I think over the years. Uh, Steve Hauer was another pastor, served in the St. Louis area, and I served with him. And Steve wrote books on leadership and all kinds of different things. And I really took a boldness from him, a godly boldness, not a boldness in yourself and who you are, but a boldness for God and who He is and what He's doing. And so, I think that's my experience that different leaders taught me different lessons.
Pastor Jim, again, as you're, celebrating decades in ministry and in various leadership positions, is there anything with regards to leadership that you've rethought or maybe changed your mind on that you thought, maybe back in your 20s when you were, accepting your first call into a congregation to now where you are in your vocation?
Yeah, there's a few, that's for sure. And and the one that perhaps resonates as much as any other is uh, it needs to happen now. That was
Mm,
my assumption. Perhaps that was even the lie, that I told myself initially in ministry. It needs to happen now. We need to make it happen now.
Mhm.
And I was very driven in that way initially in ministry, and we were blessed. We saw a great many people come to faith and there was growth and all those kinds of things. But patience was something that really had to develop for me. The Bible refers to it as a fruit of the Spirit. It was certainly an unripened fruit on my tree. uh, and and it's one that God developed, oftentimes by force through my ministry, through difficulty,
mm,
through hardship, as He often does when it comes to patience. Um, and there's something valuable that I learned about patience, not just being patient, but so often people hear that word and they think waiting. That
mm,
patience is synonymous with waiting. You're just
mhm.
you're kind of waiting, doing nothing. And patience is not so much about waiting as it is about watching.
Mm.
It's
Oh,
about watching for God to be at work, watching to see what He is doing, even as other things are coming together. And so I've really come to value patience, to watch for God at work, for Him to reveal Himself, for Him to present opportunities, rather than me having to, force it or orchestrate it or whatever the case may be.
That's what that.
I like that. Well, so how do our listeners here who are going to be in all different kinds of arenas, how they find out more about you and the wonderful work you're doing and PSD is doing out there?
Thanks. Yeah, they are certainly welcome to visit the Pacific Southwest District website. It is psd-lcms.org. There they can learn more about the ministry of the district, and they're also welcome to contact me. If I can be helpful, not just to those who are serving in the church, but any of the podcast listeners, any of the folks who are involved with Townsend, it is my pleasure to do that.
Yeah.
Especially being part of the broader Concordia family. I'm here to serve you. And if I can help in any way, reach out, send me an email, let me know. That would be great. We are just getting underway with a PSD podcast that
Yes.
highlights ministry. And, I was kind of joking with the two of you. I am really learning the ropes. My Gen Z kids have been teasing me about not knowing about podcasts and, being too old for that and all that kind of stuff. But we're having some fun with it. And you can find links to the podcast there on the website as well.
And we'll include it all in the show notes. But no, you are not too old. In fact, I bet your kids are going to start listening. On that's my dad right there. Yeah.
They should have liked and subscribed already.
Yes.
Hopefully, if they haven't already,
and maybe made a comment. Yeah, I like it.
Well, Pastor Jim, we've had so much fun chatting with you here today and so many great nuggets of information. As you know, as a listener of the podcast, we end all of our episodes with a takeaway tip. So what's your tip for our listeners today?
That's a great request. My tip is for our listeners, leaders in whatever way that gets expressed, to emphasize what God is doing in people's lives more than what they need to do. So often the assumption about leadership is that it's performance, that our emphasis as leaders is on your performance and what you need to do and what you need to make happen. There are aspects of that, but leadership is also about assurance. The assurance that God is at work in ways that we cannot be. The assurance that you are valuable because of who you are in relationship to him. The assurance that he is able to do all things. That is our faith in Christ and his life, death, and resurrection. And so that's the tip. Emphasize what God is doing in people's lives. And in that, you genuinely have lasting influence.
Well said. That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Pastor Jim. We appreciate it. And best of luck with all the great work you and your team continue to do at the district.
Thank you. Thanks for just spending some time and talking. Really enjoyed it.
This was fun. It was great.
Yeah, thanks for making time for us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University, Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.